Global outreach. You heard me mention in devotion earlier a great missions family. And Emily and I were privileged to join the great missions family. Actually, I hadn't planned on doing this, but let me show you something. Give me a second. I'm going to disappear. I'm going to go over here and grab something off the wall.
I know what he's going to grab, so that's why I'm a little nervous about it.
I have destroyed the tape that was holding it.
Not the most flattering picture. Let's just.
I need one of the interns to put this back up for me later. But so we have John and Emily at missionary training. There we are, 2011. Emily, almost ready to have our oldest daughter. Me, also looking ready to have our oldest daughter there. All right. So there we are with the flag of Ecuador. It was the June missionary orientation training in 2011, 9 years ago, if you can believe that, where we were joining Global Outreach, the great missions family. And it's really a moniker that really holds true. We really are, because of the people that came before us. And we're really thankful for that. So Global Outreach, a history. We started in 1970 as Agricultural Missions Foundation. Ag Missions is what it was called. And it was really unique in missions at the time because you have this tension that always runs in missions between gospel and good, meaning, hey, we're pure evangelism, we're pure theological education, we're pure church planning, or we are a feeding program, we're an orphanage, we're doing things to help meet needs. And so in 1970, a group of Mississippians came together and said, we actually want to do both. We want to do gospel and good, just like Jesus did in his ministry. We want to do both. The idea being that if we can meet someone's needs, if someone can eat, he can then be in a place where he can hear the gospel and respond. Around 345 missionaries, if you count project coordinators and different things you might hear about throughout your training, in 48 countries. So we've grown tremendously. So that's a today number. You know, when we talk about global outreach, we talk about a missions organization versus a missionary organization. So I had a friend who joined Global Outreach after 14 years in Asia with a different organization. And he said, John, I love Global because you're a missionary organization. I said, tell me more. He said, well, a missions organization has this specific thing. They're doing it in a specific place, a specific way. And so Global Outreach is different because Global Outreach puts the missionary in the driver's seat of ministry on the ground. So the missionary is choosing the strategy. The missionary is seeking the Spirit's guidance. The missionary is doing, and so Global Outreach is about its people. So I really liked that comparison and certainly feel like it's helpful to understand that God is using both. So we're not saying one's better than the other. God is using missions organizations tremendously to achieve his purposes. And we are part of the Great Commission that we're so passionate about is the missionary piece and supporting our people. So where a missions organization is strategy focused, imagine church planning amongst unreached peoples in the 1040 window as an example of a strategy. And we're people focused because we don't have one particular area in which our missionaries work. Missions organizations often take a percentage of what is raised. We do not. We have the 100% promise, meaning that when someone gives to a missionary, that money goes to the missionary or project that people have given to. Missions organizations, because they're trying to accomplish something specific, they have very high guardrails or high barriers to make sure they're getting the type of person that they want. You know, with Global Outreach, we want you, if you are called, we have lower barriers to getting on the field and working to do that. And from the very beginning, our first full-time missionary was an Indian national named Helen Singh. And Miss Helen joined in 1975 or 76. And that's a pretty unique thing for a missions organization, to think a missions organization based in the United States had a foreign missionary. A lot of organizations don't do that, but we at Global Outreach do that. that's pretty unique for us. So lastly, it's directed because there is a specific strategy that they want you to accomplish. With us, we want to see disciples made. We want to see people come to Christ, obviously. But we give our missionaries high autonomy and we want them to be spirit led. So I want to stop here for a second, and I want to ask you, why did you join? So I'm gonna stop the screen share and say, why did you join Global Outreach? So we have a poll we're going to launch here. All right. So 100% promise, because we're interdenominational, emphasis on church partnership. So why did you join Global Outreach? All right. I have no idea how the results, how are they coming in? Are people voting?
Okay.
What's the turnout?
Okay, I'm going to share the results here so people can see that. And hopefully you can see it on your screen. John, are you able to see it now, or do you want me to read it to you?
I can see it. I stopped screen
Okay.
sharing so that we could see here. So
Perfect.
no one joined just for the money. That's exciting. 100% promise. So that was a trick question too. It really was. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a trick question. So the interdenominational emphasis, church partnership emphasis, Becky, I see 13%. My math isn't good enough to know how many people that is. That's one person. All right. So one person's 13%. High autonomy for global outreach missionaries. So that would be 3, because 3 times 13 is 39, right? See that math? That's impressive, isn't it? I have a calculator beside me. All right. And other here, so half of us said other. So I would like for you to use the chat function. So open up the chat box here, and we want to know, it's exciting. Other, what's the other? Why did you join Global? I'm so excited. Nothing's popped up yet, but I'm excited. All right, Blake DeMeglio from Uganda says Good Shepherd's Fold and the Missionary Kids School affiliation smiley emoji. All right. So, Blake, that's a great reason to join Global. Emily Darnell says she didn't meet the barriers of the other agency. Yes, Emily and I were rejected. So we came to Global Outreach as rejects. God can use anybody. God can use anybody. Amen. All right. So Catherine says, same as Blake, jumping in, joining the Good Shepherd's Fold team there just outside of Jinja. Represent. There you go. So any other thoughts? Anybody want to add anything? Feel free to unmute yourself and say, hey, this is what I love initially as I joined Global Outreach.
I would say that first time I heard about Global Outreach, I didn't know much about it, so I started to investigate it. And I've been in 2 other organizations, one for 20 years, another one for 4. And one thing that caught my attention is the focus you guys give on the missionary, what he's doing. What you shared 5 minutes ago, it put into words what I loved about Global Outreach. It's just like, oh, that's why, it was so clear the difference, because in the other organizations I've been was a missions organization, and I never heard missionary organization. I knew something was different about Global Outreach, but I didn't know until you put into words and it made clear. Accountability is high, but freedom is something you have. You know, this balance, I see the process of you guys, how serious you are and all the steps we need to go through. I have here in front of me this little thing, you know, which I'm doing all the check, and it's so organized, but at the same time, I feel, you know, freedom, and I feel valued, and I feel that things, for me, it's a new beginning, right?
Praise the Lord.
So I just want to say that I mean, that's amazing. The more I've been sharing with some of my supporters, say, the more I go through it, more convinced I am that I made the right choice, because I was between 3 other organizations and I chose Global Outreach. So it's good, because I had that feeling maybe when I choose, I will regret. And it's the opposite. You know, the more it goes, the more I'm excited about it.
Thank you, Fernando. I appreciate you sharing that. And I was thankful too that that missionary friend who joined Global gave us those words to understand the difference. I wish I could claim it, but I can't, you know.
Can I add?
Yeah, Creamy, go ahead.
What I appreciate about Global Outreach is high autonomy and spirit-led, that point. And it demonstrates to me that you believe that people, you know, God's people, they're led by the Spirit, and He can give them a vision, and you want to give a platform or to support that vision. So kind of believe in God's people who are called to serve Him. And what you shared, the difference between the other organizations, I can totally relate. I've experienced that. It's God uses that in very powerful ways, but I can totally see the difference between the two. So I appreciate also that you take people who are not from the States and give a platform for them too.
Amen to that. We're thankful for your work. And one of the founders, LD Hancock, he owned a fabrics company in the United States. And so there was a store called Hancock Fabrics, and there were 300 and something of them across the United States, but he was from Mississippi, where we are. And his daughter, Lauren, told us about a year ago, she said, one thing that I love is seeing all the nations go to all the nations. So that MOT a year ago, we had an Indian family going to India, and we had an Ecuadorian family going to Mexico. And she just gets really excited about that. You know, the idea of from anywhere to everywhere is something we really get excited about. So we'll continue. There's some phrases I want to share. Actually, I'll show you a picture briefly of a newspaper from 2008 when they built the new building here. It says Mission Possible. And that's fun. It's 1998, okay? The graphics were different in 1998. But this is the headquarters here in Pontotoc. That's Sammy Simpson there, who was one of our founders, former missionary to Ecuador. You have Lauren, who I mentioned earlier, Mr. Hancock's daughter, Lauren, and that's Miss Elaine Hancock there, if I'm not mistaken. We got to meet her. She passed away in 2014, I believe. All right, so I'm going back to the slideshow presentation. Let's see if we can do it. I think we did it. Here we are. Did we do it, Becky? We did it. All right. So there's 3 phrases that I feel like capture our culture that we're trying to create in our organization. So we've touched on some of these, but to reiterate them, and then we'll have a time for questions before we transition. So a great missions family. So that speaks to relationships. Typically, we're doing this face-to-face this week, right here in Tupelo, and we look forward to seeing you around the world, and we mean that. That is one of my favorite things about being a part of Global Outreach, is whether it's a retreat or you're coming by Tupelo or we're coming by where you are to visit you. It's just the relationships and the family feel of that. We want to know your sending church. We want you to have a sending church. And I know that looks a little bit different in this case for some of you, as far as maybe you have a church stateside and how that works together. But we believe the church is the sender, and Becky's going to talk more about that. And we partner across organizations, realizing we're the greater missions family, the greater body of Christ. So we have missionaries that work seconded is the term, but we have partnerships with other missions organizations because we're all on the same team ultimately. So great missions family. The second phrase of the three would be holistic compassion. And I mentioned this earlier, gospel and good. We want to meet physical needs and also spiritual needs. Missions, the big three in missions, evangelism, disciple making, church planting, we want to see those. Absolutely. As a result of meeting people's physical needs, the good opens the door. But as a result, we should see people coming to Christ. We should see disciples who are making other disciples. We should see communities of believers growing and multiplying and sending other believers out to plant other churches. So we want a holistic approach, but ultimately we don't want to fall into the temptation that I think is present somewhat in becoming purely humanitarian organizations. So there's a temptation there to only meet physical needs. And we have done a great disservice if we stop there to someone. Lastly, spirit-led, and many of you spoke to this earlier, what you liked about global outreach, about low barriers. I don't blame organizations for having the rules and the barriers that, they have. I realize that our high autonomy that we give people, we have seen how we as an organization maybe have been burned, but it's worth it because of our 300 and something missionaries around the world who do take that seriously, who have integrity, and realize that high autonomy means high responsibility. That I remember Emily and I were living on the coast of Ecuador, and we felt God moving us to the mountains of Ecuador to be a part of an existing ministry. And I called the Global Outreach Home Office and I explained the situation, said, what do you think? And this team member said, well, do you feel the Spirit leading you, or do you feel the Spirit calling you to do that? And I said, yes, absolutely. We see in God's word, we see this. And he said, okay, well, move up to the mountains. So we moved to the mountains and we kept serving, for another 3 years before we came to work in the home office. So questions. So you've heard a very brief presentation on who we are. I know that Becky and Emily already tell you a good bit on your initial phone calls. A couple of, Blake, I realize you're already on a global outreach mission site, so you have a varying amount of experience or knowledge. But at the very least, we want you to understand who we are and a little bit about our history. This is our 50th year, 50 years of global outreach. So what questions do you have?
I have a question. And it is about relationships, since we mentioned this. And pretty much we had a lot of communication with Becky already and some other people on the staff. And I also checked a lot of things on your websites. But however, it is very interesting for me. When I was reading Mission Smart, it was said that expectations in the beginning of putting a relationship is a very important thing. So, if we are accepted after the month training, how would our relationship looks like? And which is your part and our part, so how we can imagine the communication, interaction, and the different roles.
I'll give a very high-level answer to that question, and then if Becky or Emily would like to add in the details of that. The high-level answer is what I often tell many of our missionaries: you get out of a relationship what you put into it. So, some of our missionaries who are fundraising and have fundraising struggles call and ask us. If someone needs prayer, emailing and asking for that. A lot of historically how we've handled it is driven by the missionary. We want to be available for you. We want to talk to you as you feel the need. If you are waiting on us to reach out, that will happen occasionally. You'll see some communication from us. You'll get emails. You'll get invited to webinars or group meetings and that sort of thing. But we are always available for our people. Then on top of that, some of the things that I look forward to are site visits. So I know that I travel some, hopefully with Emily. Right, Emily? You going with me? Okay. With Emily to do site visits. A lot of our members of our team, we want to see where you're working in your ministry. And also in retreat settings is another place where we get to see you face to face. So those are some high level ones without me getting in trouble with details that may have changed since I stepped out of that. Becky, Emily, anything you would add?
Yeah, I would just add in terms of kind of communication you can expect from Global Outreach. We do have a monthly home office connections communication that comes out from us that usually has a word from John, often Charlene, one of the other directors. Very often that monthly communication will point you back to something you'll learn about in our next session, which is My Global. So a way that you now as missionaries will be able to log on to our website to receive those kind of internal communications, as well as I believe they're now quarterly Zoom calls that you're invited to. So these things are available to you. The Zoom calls are not required, but invited and encouraged so that you can get to know other missionaries and more of our staff. So those are a couple communications out from us. And then again, part of our hope through this MOT is that you will connect those faces and names here at our office so that when your questions come up, because they will, as you're walking into this and learning, that you feel a very open door. If you have a finance question, to reach out to Marla, or if you have a question on some policies, and you can reach out to Marshall. But all of us want to say the door is open. So please don't feel like you don't have a resource here if you have questions or needs. And if you don't know who to go to, you can always come to myself or Emily first, and we can help connect you to the right person. So hopefully that adds a little bit more to the picture.
And I was just going to add, Bob, who's the director of missionary care, is going to talk more about like what his role is in caring for you, who our regional care coordinators are, who are missionaries on the field in country that are going to be reaching out to you as well. But the neat thing is I think our whole staff views themselves as missionary care. So I remember Marla's been here the longest. We're not going to say she's the oldest too, just she's been here the longest. And I just remember when she and I would turn in an expense report and email her or ask for a reimbursement or something, and she'd always be asking me, how's my daughter? How can I be praying for you? So that's always a neat kind of I know all of us feel that way, that we want to be there for you if you need us. We want to check in on you. We love to go visit, and we all kind of take turns doing that in the office too. So we enjoy that.
Draghi.
Yes. About sending church, I have a question. What happens, for example, if, we are serving with Global Outreach, for example, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, and then our sending church decides that it's not able to support us, that part anymore, of 200, which you need to provide. What happens there then?
That's a great question. Our director of mobilization, Becky, is about to talk about Barnabas teams and church partnership. But I just want you guys to know, again, if this is about global outreach culture and history, that we try to do the best we can to help support you how we can. So it's not like we're chasing you with a rule book and we have to say, you have to follow this rule book. It's less about that and more about, hey, for you guys to say to us, hey, I'm really struggling with my sending church. What can we do? So that's more of the approach of our culture and who we are. With whatever situation comes up, we're here to help. So hopefully that helps with that. We have missionaries go through that. We have missionaries who've been on the field since early 2000s who called me in December and said, hey, our sending church won't support us anymore, and they've been with us for almost 20 years. What do we do? So we have missionaries, and we're not going to instantly fire those missionaries, right? We're going to say, hey, how can we help connect you? Who are other churches you've worked with? Who are short-term teams that have been there? And try to help coach you through getting the support that you need. Draghi, that is a great segue. I'm realizing where we are on time, that I want Becky to have an opportunity to talk about Barnabas teams, about church partnerships. This is really an amazing piece of work that has grown as a part of our culture as a result of Becky's leadership over the last couple of years. So I will sign off for now. It has been a joy to see you guys and be with you today. I will see you in several other sessions before the end of the month.